struggling to move your nonprofit forward? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the Nonprofit Architect, where we are giving you the actionable steps you need to launch and grow your nonprofit organization. Now, here's your host, Travis Johnson.
Hey, this is your host, Travis Johnson with the Nonprofit Architect, helping you build a stronger nonprofit. Hop to our link over on patreon.com/nonprofitarchitect. Throw us a few bucks a month. It won't break the bank, but it'll help us stay on the air and keep providing this amazing content and epic value. Today, we have the fabulous Danielle Davis, who's been in business since she was 10. She's now in her mid-20s, working in the Army, and is a business coach and a nonprofit coach. Danielle, how are you today?
I am better than good. And yourself?
It's kind of an day, but as soon as I hopped on here with you, I got immeasurably better.
Excellent. Good to hear.
Danielle, why don't you go ahead and give the listeners a little snapshot, a couple minute download of what it is that you do. There's a whole list up here on my page, but it'd probably sound better if you told us.
Well, I am essentially a business analyst with a heavy background in technical writing and finances. I'm also a certified grant writer and peer reviewer for the Department of Justice, meaning I'm one of the people who go through the grants at the federal level and determine or not whether the Department of Justice grants get funded. I help streamline businesses and nonprofits the fastest way to profits. The core emphasis is with business development, operations, and technical writing. So we combine those three things in order to make sure that you have minimal profit and productivity leaks. And again, as profitable as possible, because I believe a lean business equals fat profits. And that's what we all want.
Lean business equals fat profits. I definitely like that. On our pre-interview, we had talked quite extensively about the grant writing process, the legal and financial framework, and the actual startup piece. And I understand that you are a pro at taking that idea and getting the ball rolling from square one. So my listeners out there that they have this great idea, but they haven't yet done any of the paperwork, what is that process? What do those steps look like?
So even before I even agree to that part, I try to encourage people not to start nonprofits just because there has to be an actual need for it. You don't want a big overlap within your community. So aside from just doing a name search when we're going through the paperwork to make sure that somebody else doesn't have that name in the Secretary of State, I also make sure that somebody doesn't have the exact same nonprofit, because it makes more sense. Instead of having 5 struggling nonprofits, you can have 2 to 3 that focus on the same thing because there's strength in numbers, right? So I do a name search, and then we get the EIN, Articles of Incorporation, and we do the bylaws. And that's the initial part. And once that part is done, I encourage nonprofits to get a tax exempt status. And depending on their budget size, if it's under 50,000, then they can do the easy form, which takes approximately 90 days to get an answer back. But in most cases, they want to file the 1023 standard form, which is $1,000 and above. And so there's a big price difference with that. The easy form is $275 and the standard form is $600 for the filing fees.
That's perfect. Can you repeat the filing? The internet went wonky. The form numbers? You said the 1020 easy.
The 1023 easy form is for nonprofits with gross receipts of $50,000 or less. And the 1023 standard is a longer form, and that's $50,000 and above.
Oh, I gotcha. So hop on a Secretary of State website to do the name search, right? So anyone that's incorporating a business or a nonprofit has to go through there and see what names are on file. If the name in your head is open, then you at least have a good shot there. That only takes, I know in Oklahoma, that only costs like $100, but it's going to have it's going to differ by state. The EIN, Employer Identification Number from the IRS website, sounds scary, but it only takes you like 10 minutes to get. And I think there's a phone number you can even call to get that set up. And then you need a bank account, if I'm not mistaken. And then you mentioned the Articles of Incorporation. What else do you have to say about that?
Well, I'm not sure. Be more specific. What did you want to know more about that?
So the people that don't know this process, what does that mean, the Articles of Incorporation? What are those?
That's just a legal filing to incorporate the nonprofit, just so it's not like a sole proprietor business. It's what makes it a business. And I emphasize the business part because even though it's a not-for-profit, you still make money. The difference between a for-profit and nonprofit is the way the accounting is done and who it benefits. So in a for-profit business, it's the stakeholders, i.e. the owner founders who benefit. And with a nonprofit, it's the public that benefits. But you can still make a great salary running a nonprofit.
We've got the 1, 2, 3 steps and how to get that done, what forms to file. Most people just jump up to the $600 level for the 501c3, so they never have to go back and do the paperwork. I understand that that $275 or $225 doesn't count towards that $600 later if you need to step up. So most just opt for the $600 straight up front, and that's perfectly okay. But the biggest thing that she pointed out was make sure other people aren't doing the same thing that you're trying to do. I talked to another gal who is under a financial bubble of another nonprofit. And what they did is just created a branch, a different program off of their main tree trunk, a branch that covers what they want to do without having to go through the process. I'm not saying do it or don't do it. I'm saying search, see what's out there. Maybe you'll find someone with the same heart that you have that's doing something close or something similar, or is looking to expand their program base, and they can do that by adding you under their umbrella without having to have you do all their own paperwork. Plus, you already have a team in place. They've already got funding. They've already got a staff. They've already got backing. They've already got supporters. They've already got an email list. They've got all the things that you need to get organized to help kick this off right, which means less work for you, and you can get started sooner. And it's easier because you got a team already working there with you. Now, I understand, Danielle, that you also do the legal and the finance piece. So brand new nonprofits, what do they need to know about legal?
There's the basic stuff like intellectual property when it comes to like trademarks, copyrights. You also want to make sure that you follow the state and local nonprofit regulations. In some instances, like I had a client come to me, she had a for-profit business and she wanted to turn that into a nonprofit. And essentially she wanted to become an endowment. So she wanted the grants and donations to pay for her what she had originally as a for-profit product. And she wanted to convert that and give that same product to schools. And when she had given me her budget and everything, she and her husband wanted to make $80,000 each. So essentially it's like she wanted to use a nonprofit as a front, which doing so would take away, would violate the 501c3 and the state laws and regulations for that. And not even that, just on a federal level as well. You can't do that. So there's rules about converting nonprofits to for-profits and vice versa. So you have to be mindful of that. You have to be mindful of how the funding in general is being moved. That's why you have to file a Form 990 every year to the IRS. And you also have to be mindful that every dollar is accounted for.
Yeah, you can't just do whatever you want with these dollars. Most of them have your board has to decide on bylaws, and you choose what you do and do not spend money on and why. And when you become a nonprofit, you as the founder don't have sole control over it. Now, is your board probably going to go with what you want? Yeah, probably. Especially when you're young, early in the nonprofit scene, it probably makes sense. Chances are no one's getting any kind of paycheck, and that's just how it goes when you're young. But they have to determine if they want consulting from Danielle and her services. They're going to have to decide as a board if they want to pay for that service. That's the thing that they want to do because they have laws, rules, and regulations that they have to follow. And you can't just go ahead and do whatever you want. If you decide you want to pay volunteers, that's got to go by your board and get approval. What do people have to consider for the financial side other than accounting for every dollar?
Actually have an accounting system in place. They can use something like Wave or QuickBooks, FreshBooks. Just making sure that when they have separate accounts, so funds aren't commingled. So that's one thing. Or actually, that's two. So setting it up as far as like the actual system. Then even going back to the system, whether it's going to be cash-based or accrual. So say you have a pending donation come in. Do you count that as incoming money or money that you have? Something like that you have to take in consideration. Also, when your funding year starts, say you start your nonprofit in March, do you want it to go based off the calendar year or do you want it to go from March to the end of February the following year? And that's just like an accounting piece that you have to consider. The other thing is making sure that cash donations are accounted for. And then if you're 501c3, making sure that you are reaching the proper limits and making sure that those people actually receive tax exemptions. making sure that you're aware of that. And especially when it comes to the fundraising process, like how you go about collecting cash and making sure that's all accounted for and not going to people's pockets.
Absolutely. That's not something you want to let slip through the cracks. But speaking of funding, you are, as far as I understand, kind of a grant writing guru. It's something you really enjoy, you really rock solid with. And I understand you have some steps and some tips for our listeners if they're looking to get grants in the grant writing game. What should they do?
Positioning is one of the most important things when it comes to grant writing. And something that I believe in is you should be a friend before you need a friend. And I raise that because a lot of times in grant applications, there's a match requirement, whether it's in kind or a cash donation. And so say you have to come up with 25%. If you don't have that in your budget and you need to reach out to the community, you don't want to be doing that in the middle of an application, especially if you're brand new to them and they don't know you from Adam or Eve. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, it's important to reach out to the community, small businesses, and even corporations and let them know of your mission and make a partnership. Don't just make it about, hey, I do this thing, you should give me money. It's how can we come together? And so that's why I say, be a friend before you need a friend. That way, when those certain grant opportunities come up, they're already ready to give you the money or they're all ready to contribute in some way. Because it doesn't always have to be cash. Like in-kind donation could be if you have a nonprofit and the focus is workforce development and you know people who do resume writing or career building, or even if you have a local business that sells business casual clothing, they could donate some of the clothing to the members of to the benefactors of the nonprofit versus having to go out of pocket for it. Mm-hmm. But if they don't know who you are and you're like, hey, I need some suits for so-and-so, they're going to be like, well, here's how much they cost.
Exactly. Very important. I love that. Be a friend before you need a friend. That Absolutely. Sounds like it's T-shirt worthy to me. I love it. I just talked to a young lady earlier today. She was interested in some business stuff. She's looking to get out of the Navy here before too long. And she was talking about what she needs to do in the business world. The topic of networking came up, and she just didn't understand, like, what is networking? That sounds weird and dumb. And if you've never done it before, you're like, it's just a bunch of people standing around talking. Like, why would I get involved in that? And part of it was, I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers, but together we might know someone that can connect us to the person that has the solution. So it doesn't matter if you're in business or if you're in the nonprofit world or whatever it is that you're doing, networking and meeting people. And it's not just like, what can you do for me? Like when I go to networking events, it's how can I provide value to you? How can I impact what it is that you're doing, your dream, your vision? And then as we build a relationship, there might come a time where I need somebody or I have a question. And because I've built a relationship with Danielle, I can say like, hey, yo, Danielle, what's that thing you were talking about with grant writing? I've got a client. I don't know a lot about grant writing, but I know you're thebomb.com. Like, what should I tell them, or should I just pass them along to you? And then because we've networked and we've built that relationship, now Danielle can either tell me the answer, give me the advice, or I can pass along the person that needs a hand to Danielle, and then everybody wins. The person that I'm talking to has a problem. I've connected them to the person that can help solve their problem. Both people benefit. And they also know that I'm a good guy and they like me. So that's networking.
Yep. And there's actually a quote that I want to get trademarked, and it's build rapport and you'll never be poor.
Build rapport and you'll never be poor.
Exactly.
I like that one too.
To further answer your question about other things with networking, particularly with positioning, you want to have a solid mission that's clear. You can't just say, I do this thing and help these people. You have to make it so it tugs at the heartstrings and therefore opens wallets. You do that because everything is emotional based, even when just in regular business, and not regular business, but even just with like for-profit businesses, people buy from people, which again, emotionally based because they connect with them somehow. Sometimes people just buy things that are needs based, but at the end of the day, what makes you unique versus them buying the same product from somebody else is how they connect with you. It's not a matter of who they saw first. Mm-hmm. And the same thing goes along with nonprofits, and same thing goes along with grant writing. You have to appeal to the funders.
How do they find grants? And do you recommend that they run themselves or hire a grant writer?
It depends on their background. And again, it depends on how solid they have the business development. I always recommend they have a business plan, and you can just do a simple one-page one based off of like 9 key factors. or you can do a full-on business plan that's anywhere from like 5 to 20 pages. But if you want to start with something simple like a one-page business plan, go for it and build from there. But as far as who to hire or when to hire a grant writer, I think if you're in the 18th month and beyond stages and you've been running it steadily since, and you really need that funding coming in, I definitely recommend outsourcing it. Because your nonprofit can't survive off of donations and fundraising alone, nor can it survive off of just grants. Because the grant writing process takes anywhere from 3 to 12 months to get funded. And that's if you're funded.
Oh yeah,
So
absolutely.
You almost have to treat grant writing like a lottery. You don't know if you're going to hit it.
That's definitely true. But I've talked to a few grant writers in my time, and it's interesting to see how they look at the process differently from someone that just has a nonprofit. My listeners in the nonprofit world, you're looking at it and you're debating on paying a grant writer $250, $500, $1,000, $2,000 to write 1, 5, 10 grants. And you got to understand, you're going to the pro, the person that does this on a regular basis. It's their job. They've seen hundreds of these things. They go through them. They submit it. They know the process. They know those things. You might be able to do some of your own plumbing. You might be able to, right? You might even be able to do a water heater. But are you going to replace all of the plumbing in your whole house? You're probably not, right? You're probably going to go professional. You want to make sure it's done right. You want to make sure you leverage your experience, the license and bond, all those things. And in my estimation, it's the same with the grant writing process. You might get lucky and get a good shot or two in, or you might just be spinning your wheels. If you are in the early stages of nonprofit land, you are busy. Chances are you're the janitor and the CEO of this thing because you've got your Uncle Bob on the board and he's busy, and you've got 2 of your friends on the board to call it a quote unquote nonprofit, which may not be the most up and up area, but you're doing most of the bulk work alone. You're going to have to find time and off ramps and money to say, hey, I need someone to take care of this. I need someone to take care of this. In grant writing, when you really need that money, I think you're going to want to go to a professional.
Absolutely. And then it's one less thing that takes off of your plate. If that's not your zone of genius, that's not your lane, it's always best to outsource. And not just with grant writing, but anything you do, whether it's web design, whether it's fundraising, whether it's setting up systems, automations, workflow, you always want to outsource what you're not good at, because then you'll be stuck at it. Something that could take an expert 1 hour would take you a month to finish.
It's funny you bring up the website building stuff, because I had set up a blog for Warriors Wallet, warriorswallet.com. It's still up. It's there. It's fine. But for the nonprofit architect, I was going to do it again, but I wanted something a little bit more advanced, a little bit more fancy, a little bit something different. And so I thought I would get this thing rolling, and I got the domain, I got the WordPress, and I am stuck. And I've been spinning my wheels for months on this thing. And to be quite honest, I've been busy with other things. I didn't think I would be this busy. I've been busy with a lot of other things. Work, first and foremost, connecting with wonderful people like Danielle, running this podcast, and being deployed in the Middle East. But I had to break down to my team and be like, hey, I can't do this thing. Can't do it right now. It's like being a 5-year-old trying to hop on a space shuttle and fly to the stars. It's just not the experience that I have. Can you take this over for me? And they're like, oh, yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about what it's going to look like and what you want it to do. We'll get working on it. And it's something that they do all the time. I wanted to learn as part of the process, but it's going to have to be another time for me to learn that thing.
Absolutely. And that's the other part of positioning. So when you start your nonprofit, you see that there is a need. It doesn't overlap with anybody else within the community. You got the perfect name, you found a name for it, and you did everything else as far as setting up the entity right. You want to make sure that you have the right board members, the right staff, and or volunteers, because you don't want to just, like you said, grab your Uncle Bob and a few cousins to have the board in place. And then when you actually need them, they're just warm bodies and names on paper. You need to actually have a fully functional nonprofit. And so the vetting process is very important. And you need to figure out, essentially by doing a SWOT analysis, which stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You do that with your board members to see what kind of people you need and or to see what kind of people you already have. And then from there, you can move forward and kind of tweak things around so you have the great people surrounding you. You know what I mean? To really get this thing off and running.
What do you recommend for a size of initial board?
I would recommend anywhere from 5 to 7 members.
What do you recommend for a board composition? What kind of attributes are you looking for the board members, especially in your first board?
I would definitely recommend not having people who are directly involved with political parties, whether on the state or local level, just because sometimes people use nonprofits as a segue to advance their political careers. So that's one thing I would be mindful of. I would be mindful of people who aren't already overextended. And again, wanting something just to look good on a resume, you want people who are actually involved to treat it like a part-time job, somebody who could dedicate 10 to 40 hours per month on it. You also want people who are logical and not emotional based, where they get too caught up in the feelings department. You know what I mean? You want people who can sit there and be grounded. And I think that's very important because I've sat in on a lot of board meetings, even helping my nonprofit clients set up and pick these people. It's always interesting to see. I'm like, that one, definitely not that one. It almost feels like a jury duty panel.
Yeah.
And you kind of actually have to do that when you're picking your board members. Some other attributes I would find, again, when doing a SWOT analysis for your nonprofit, well, looking through their resumes, what kind of skill sets do they have? Do they have an IT background? Do they have a human resource background, finance, legal background? That's important too to carry over to help with all the hats that need to be worn within a nonprofit. So I think those are the big 3 things that I would look out for. Not a political affiliation, not overly emotional, and what are their strengths and how they contribute to the mission.
Yeah, actual skills, right? We had I've been on the board of 2 wonderful nonprofits, and the biggest thing from the day-to-day board composition, the thing that I really, really loved was having a strong, organized secretary. That in and of itself is huge value. Someone that's actually taking meeting notes, that actually follows up, that actually shows up, all of those things. I think your board secretary is one of those linchpins you need, in addition to all of the stuff that Danielle mentioned. But people are going to have their different values. They're going to want to donate their time, talent, or treasure. On a board, you're going to want to leverage their treasure and their talent. Mm-hmm. If their talent is connecting people, that is a fantastic thing to have when you're trying to figure out, where can we do an event? Where can we meet people? Where can we find volunteers? Who do I need for this? I need connections in the media. If you have that connector on your board, you are going to be very happy with your choice. If you have someone that's not singling out single moms, or you have a single mom with 3 small boys, and they walk in and they seem hurried and rushed, they might love you and you still love them, but they might not have time for your board and your vision. And that's okay. That's perfectly okay. You don't have to say yes. Be like, thank you so much for your interest. I still love you, girl, but I'm going to need more time than I think you have. And we'll still connect later on other things, and we'll go check out, the movie this weekend. No big deal. But ensuring that they have the time for you is very important. I've been talking to a lot of nonprofits recently about whether a board should or should not donate to the nonprofit. And I'm under the opinion, this is just Travis's opinion, that if they're not supporting you with their treasure, with their money, some capacity, I'm not dictating that, then do they really believe in your board, your mission, your vision? And if they do, right, and they do donate, it is so much easier when they give the ask to other people and they say, join me, join us as we support this vision, this nonprofit, this mission, and help us impact this group of people. Join me is a fabulous and fantastic ask, but they can't use it unless they donate.
Exactly.
So I understand you're in the process of a rebrand right now. So we're not using your current business name, and that's fine. Yeah. How can our audience connect with you?
They can find me on social media. I am Danielle Dee, and that's IamDanielleDee. Or they can connect via email. My email address is deluxeconsulting@gmail.com. And I'm in the process because of the rebrand. I don't have my website up, but I have an older website. It's dclsllc.com.
Fantastic, Danielle. And how can we help support you?
Well, I'm always taking on good new clients, and sharing always helps. So any of my social media, if it speaks to you, go ahead and share it out. Friends, family, colleagues might appreciate it as well.
Hey, thanks for a great interview, Danielle. Love having you on the show. Love connecting with you further, and can't wait to speak to you down the road. Thanks so much. You have a great day.
Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to The Nonprofit Architect. To listen to all our past shows, visit http://nonprofitarchitect.org. And be sure to subscribe, rate, and review our show. Thank you.